The Strangers Chapter 1 is directed by Rennie Harlan and stars Madeline Pesh, Froy Gutierrez, and among others. And in this story, it deals with a couple that are traveling through somewhere in Oregon, and they end up staying at this Airbnb, and they end up pretty much getting stalked by these three mass killers. And that's as pretty simple as it is. And I don't know if this is supposed to be as part of as a prequel or sequel or reboot or whatever this is, but it's a new entry in the Strangers franchise. And as it goes along, they end up having to survive from the killers. Now, here's a little backstory. Now, this movie was directed by Rennie Harlan, who I've actually been a big fan of in the past. You know, he made some really fun movies that I really enjoyed growing up, especially with Deep Blue Sea, and then also Cliffhanger. And then his first foray into horror actually started out with Nightmare on Elm Street. Well, his first big, one of his earliest horror films that he started out with was Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, which to this day, I actually still find as kind of an underrated of the series. It's not as good as the other three, but I still enjoy it as one of those kind of movies that at least, still holds as, having that very fun type of MTV type of level with Freddy Krueger and stuff. And it really misses a lot of things on the writing and a lot of other areas, but I still think that it was one of the last good ones, at least we had. One of the last least decent Nightmare on Elm Street films up until New Nightmare. And so when he directed other films like Cliffhanger, which I really loved, with Sylvester Stallone, and then also Deep Blue Sea, which I still find as one of the best shark films, and one of the most underrated films of the 90s. The guy definitely has his talent behind the camera and everything. And while I haven't really seen much of his other works, because I haven't seen his recent Legend of Hercules movie, which I heard was really terrible. And also I didn't see Cut the Island either. But I just haven't really seen much of a lot of his other stuff. But I've always just admired the guy as a director, and going into this one, it got me interested because, well, I've been a really big fan of the first Strangers, and as you can see that behind me, I still to this day love the movie, and I haven't seen it in a while, but even when I saw it in theaters, it was one of those kind of movies that was like a good throwback to classic John Carpenter style of horror, and when it comes to slasher films, that very subtle and building suspense the right way type of momentum that really drives the plot forward, and drives the film forward. And while it may be very limited on plot, it still gave you that kind of mystery about who the killers were and stuff. And the fact that you don't really know much of what's going on, it gives you that really great atmosphere in the woods and stuff, and that claustrophobic feel. And it's definitely one that I can always go back to if I want that very, good type of throwback to early slasher films. And when 2018 came around, there was the second one that came out called Strangers Prey at Night, which I haven't seen, but I kind of didn't really think about watching it because it was one of those kind of movies that just kind of went off my radar. And plus, I was going through some stuff during 2018 where I wasn't catching up on a lot of films, so I missed that one. And I heard that one can be hit or miss depending on who you talk to. I heard some people really enjoy it, but then all others here I've heard say that it's very generic as a slasher film. And so going into this one, I kind of got interested because there was word going around that Rennie Harlan was getting attached to make a new trilogy as far as The Strangers, and being able to, I guess, tell the story like how it all began, which made me wonder if this was actually supposed to be a prequel. Because from the description that I've also read and everything was that it wasn't necessarily from what he described or from what the plot synopsis was going on, that it wasn't trying to be necessarily a reboot, but instead like the beginning of how it all began, especially from the trailers. And after upon seeing the film, I can say that, man, as much as I love the first one, and I haven't seen Prey at Night, and I give credit for Rennie Harlan trying, but unfortunately it misses a lot of things that really hold the movie back from just going into the most generic slasher film that I've pretty much seen in a while. It tries to do some things that are kind of cool, but unfortunately it is everything that I expected, and it made me a very disappointed on what it was trying to do. And with it trying to build itself up as a new trilogy, I don't really see, unless they do something more with the other two coming out, this one isn't really get off to a good start. And so to get my pros out of the way, I thought the cast in this were hit and miss. I like the girl in this, Madeline. I forgot how to pronounce her last name, but I thought she at least did great with trying to hold it together. She definitely has a great screen presence, and when she's scared, she does great in the scenes where she's emotional and stuff. The guy, not so much. I think that he really kind of struggled when it comes to some of his dialogue at times. and he definitely, and this is more a blame to do with the writing, but the writing that they have for the characters, they make really dumb decisions that I'll get to later. But and the whole thing with their romance and relationship is, it's there, but it didn't really give me that kind of emotional level, or so to speak, like it was with the first Strangers, where I felt for Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman, because it feels like in this one, they've been together for a while, and they haven't, wanted to take the vows or anything like that. But I mean, and there's some little quirks that they have with the characters here and there, but it's just one of those things where I didn't really feel myself fully attached with them that much, to really care necessarily how it played out. And so, but on a performance level, I still thought the girl was good, and I loved the performances of the masked killers. I thought they were really great, playing like they were like the actors that were in the first Strangers. So they went back to that kind of vibe to its merits. But I'll give it, but that's really not really much to home about, because the killers that wear the masks, they don't really, have any identities or anything, but they at least try to, work with what they can with it. And then we have, as far as the rest of my pros, I will have to say that the production design, the way it's, secluded in the woods and stuff, it does work to its advantage on giving the right atmosphere, because there's actually some really good vibes of going back to like old school type of films, especially with it being like in the woods and stuff, and also with the foggy areas and everything. I got to give it to Renny Harlin for at least trying to go with a style that was really working for it. Especially we have the sequence that takes place where our two leads are going through the woods and stuff. When it gets really foggy, it definitely puts you in the right kind of tense atmosphere. And I will also give it credit for at least the first half. It was at least trying to build some suspense up. While it can be, while I do have some cons I'll get into later with it, it at least tried to make itself into going with the direction of, the music playing like you heard from the first film and stuff. Well, not the same music, but like, the kind of where they were playing old records and stuff. The soundtrack is definitely top notch. I really like hearing classic songs in this, and the very suspenseful moments where you just see the killers like in the background not really doing much. Those are the parts that I really love the most, especially that worked in the first film. The subtlety is what really shines. And also, there is at least like one or two parts, especially involves where they're eating and stuff, when it builds it up. I thought it was really interesting, like you see in the trailer where there's blood coming out. That was good. And then there's also a sequence that has to do with a piano. And I won't spoil what happens, but let's just say that it puts you in. It definitely got me on the little bit of the edge when it was building itself up. So the building up part was interesting. But this is now where I have to get into some of my cons. And as much as I was getting into that stuff and some other things that come here and there, unfortunately the movie is boggled down with a lot of familiar slasher stuff that we've seen countless times. Whether it's person going on their own, making a noise like a dumbass, especially in one part when you got him like crushing a water bottle or whatever for no reason. Well, because he suffers from asthma and stuff like that. And it's given him a way for the killers to try to come after him. And just, just little things here and there where, not going to spoil anything. I mean, I might get into some minor spoilers later, but it's also one of those things, too, where you have him having a shotgun, and he uses it in the most ridiculous way. There's a part where he's in the truck, and at any point, he could shoot the killer right there, but instead, he waits at the last moment when the vehicle they're in is already crushed and everything, and he just immediately fires afterwards. It's like, why waste time like that? I mean, I know that that's the whole thing you want to see with slasher films, but it really pisses me off when slasher films don't follow a consistent pattern of making characters smart. That's just always one of the biggest pet peeves I've always had with a lot of slasher films. And unless it's done in a way where I can still forgive it for other stuff, here it's just everything that's void of why I don't like when they do that with these type of movies. That, and also getting into some other really dumb shenanigans. They have a tendency of conveniently losing their phones as they go along with the movie, and having stuff that's like left behind and everything. It's like, are you not paying attention to this shit? Especially going back to what I said earlier with the whole like stuff that involves the piano. Let's just say, going into just as kind of a minor spoiler, but the fact that the girl is playing the piano and can't see that the killer is in the mirror looking up or anything. I mean, I know she's paying attention to the piano, but the fact that she didn't even notice it, like in the background above her, I found myself like very, wondering like, okay, anybody could have pointed that out, especially if you can, hear the killer like either or especially if you're looking up and say, oh shit, there's somebody there, you know. I know that's nitpicking and all, but it really feels like there's more stuff that these characters really could have done to outwit the killers. And with this also not being a prequel, because the movie kind of had some false advertisement, that I don't know. I think at this point it's just going to just be a regular reboot, and it has nothing to do with the other films. Especially since it's in current times with smartphones and everything, it would have been even more better. I think it would have been better if maybe the main guy was like in on the whole thing, where he was maybe part of the killers plan or anything like that, or you know, you could have had this be very subtly take place before the events of the First Strangers, but it doesn't go that route, and that's a very missed opportunity of what they don't do with it. And then on top of that, it really feels really weird that we're getting into some stuff that involves where you got townspeople that are in on it, well, not in on it, but like that are being all kind of creepy as it goes along, and you kind of get the idea that maybe some people in the town are like either in on it or they might be the killers themselves or anything, which I don't know if they're going to really explore that in 2 and 3. We'll have to see. And it just really seems like, you know, they're trying to give subtle hints of stuff, which I appreciate they're not trying to do much of a backstory on, because you want to still keep the killers a mystery. But the problem is that it still raises a lot more questions that don't need to go that way. And it almost feels like it's very, you know, like it feels very like unneeded, because this stuff that they do in it really has no purpose the way it plays along on the rest of the film. And so there's that, and it just seems like when they were throwing certain lines that were supposed to be from the original, like when they're saying, is Tamra there, or things like that, or you're home and things like that, you know, it just seems like it's just repeating the same stuff from the first one that really worked well. And also I kind of found the ending pretty much like, you know, like a more sequel baiting like it was with the first film, but on a more different type of level. And I kind of find I was just in the theater like, yeah, that was kind of weird. And on top, one of the other things too, I was kind of out of place with some of the dialogue, was that there's a part where him and her are having this like very tenseful, like tearful moment and everything, and we're talking about like him wanting to marry her and stuff like that, and it really came like out of nowhere and felt out of place the way it was playing along, especially when it's supposed to, when you're in the presence of killers that are around you. You know, I thought that was just really stupid the way they put that in there. And so there's more I can go into detail, but this is also a movie that's not really right home about, because it really does feel like it's got some stuff that's really off to a bad start. But I am curious to see at least where it goes in the next two, but I was pretty disappointed with this one, and so I don't really have much to whole lot going into as far as other things, and especially since the movie is very simple, especially since the movie doesn't really have much of a, you know, it's a very simple premise and everything. But if it just made me really want to go watch the first movie again, and I might even check out Pray at Night sometime, but I don't know. I'll just have to see. But with that being said, I'm going to give the movie a disaster grade on the Film Freaks meter. And so, for those of you who have also seen The Strangers Chapter 1 and also the other films in the Stranger series, let me know in the comments about what you thought about it. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.